Our first speaker is Elliot Eisenberg. I think many of you people have seen him. He's been with us 2 or 3 times in the past. He's an internationally acclaimed economist and public speaker, specialized in making the economy fun. Elliot has a master's degree in public administration and a PhD from Syracuse. He's also the former senior economist from NAHB in Washington and the creator of the Multifamily Stock Index. Elliot, I want to welcome you up. Thank you.
Thank you for the warm introduction. I'm not sure where to begin, but I think I'm going to start with an apology. I'm going to start with an apology because you bring me to a lovely place. I mean, this is one of the prettiest cities around. It really is. I mean, nothing like Columbia or nothing, but it's a lovely place. And the food looks delicious, and the booze look great, and I'm ready to party and have a great time. And yet, the news I'm going to share with you is not great. So let's put it that way. I've gotten happy over the last several months, I must admit, but I still suspect we're due for a mild recession here. I really do. I think the interest rates that are so high, I think have a cumulative effect on us that's going to eventually dump us. The Fed's going to keep raising or keep them high until something breaks, and then the recession comes with some bad luck like we're having now with high rates that are going bonkers. So keep this in mind. But, and this is really important, all recessions aren't the same. You think back to bad recessions. You're an old guy. You remember recessions. You remember like the 74, 75 recession. I mean, you were already 50 years old at that point. Pardon me?
21%.
20, exactly, because you were 50 and you remember. But, and some of you may remember 81, 82. You remember probably 81, 82. And then all of you remember 08, 09. Those are really, really bad recessions. This recession won't be like that because there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the economy. That's the issue here, right? There's just, we have inflation, they raise rates, so you get a recession, and then it ends. So let's look at what's going on right now. Why? We haven't had the recession yet. There's no evidence of recession yet. There's evidence of cracking here and there in consumer confidence and this and that. We'll get there. But C is remarkably strong. I mean, this is household consumption. It's 70% of GDP. It's wildly strong. We are spending our brains out. Now, I have a new wrinkle as to why this is the case. The government updated some data. The government always lies. You know how it is. But they're trying to fix their lies. I'm kidding. But so we think there's more money in the system. This is helping. So this is very strong. Corporate investments in plant and equipment and inventory, not so hot. It hasn't been that good because cost of capital is higher. The fear of recession has been sort of palpable for about a year. Our purchases of stuff, we bought so much stuff during COVID, we don't need stuff so badly anymore. Government spending is the third term. They're both about 15, 16%. So 70, 16, 16, and -2 is exports minus imports. Government spending has been wildly stimulative. In the near immediate future, probably mildly contractionary. I'll get into why. But it's been so positive and so big and so stimulative for so long that there's a lag effect here. We've got so much money, a hangover of money, if you will, because of all the money that came from the government during COVID and since. It's, again, wearing out now, but there's still a lot left, and that's important. Lastly, exports minus imports. It's interesting. On one hand, they shouldn't be helping us because our dollar is very strong, making U.S. imported goods in foreign currency expensive. But on the other hand, we bought so much stuff during COVID that imports are dropping like a rock. Exports are falling a little bit, but imports are really dropping. And as a result, the net's pretty positive, actually helping GDP. So now we're getting a bit of luck. That's just pure good luck. We had bad luck before. Now we're getting a little bit of good luck. So this is very strong, weak, and surprisingly good. As long as this is good at 70%, we're fine. The rest almost doesn't matter. If this goes into the can, forget it. Jump out of the airplane, pull the parachute, right? First, let's look at why our economy is doing as well as it is. There's a couple explanations. I'll give you the first one here. This is automobiles. You can think of automobiles like a tenth of a house. An automobile costs $45,000. A new house costs $450,000. I mean, I'm ballparking here, right? We make 1.6 million, 1.5 million houses a year. We make 15 million cars. We finance our houses, we finance our cars. As go housing and autos traditionally, so goes the economy on the ups and the downs. They drive us in and drive us out of recession, no pun intended. But not now, not now. Yeah, sure, existing housing sales, which we'll get to later, they suck. That's obvious. And that makes you happy. You're living off the misery of the realtors and appraisers and all those guys. They can't sell houses and buy, so you're building houses. That's great. Look at this. So you're building houses, rates are almost 8%, and you're building houses, and home builder confidence, which we'll get to later, isn't bad. I mean, I wouldn't say it's great, but it's not bad given almost 8%, 7.5% mortgages. Similarly, look here at cars. Interest rates are going up, and what happened to car sales? They're doing well because we couldn't buy cars for a long time. Because here was the pit of COVID. We were all going to die, and there's no point buying a car. I could buy a hearse, but I couldn't get any of them. So, don't have anything. Then we all moved to like somewhere else. We moved from where we live, where there's going to be COVID, to there. And then the supply chains break because no one's working. And now car sales are improving. They were 15.6 or 15.7 last month, seasonally adjusted annualized number. I mean, really good numbers. Here we have rates we haven't seen in 20 years and car sales are going up. That's ridiculous. It's a hangover from COVID. And our economy is getting over a huge hangover of COVID. This is a positive hangover. We have extra money, we have more demand for cars, we have more demand for this, extra savings, the money supply grew so much. We'll talk about this, but our economy still isn't back to normal. Employment in sectors of the economy just this month finally returned to where they were before COVID began. So we're still making up for time. This is total spending. This is 70% of GDP. This is what's driving the boat. And you can see if you take a finger, the middle finger perhaps, and go like this and close one eye, it's as if COVID never happened. It's like a straight line. And yeah, you see the ditch of COVID, obviously, but spending up there, it's totally normal. It's as if nothing happened. The combination of massive fiscal stimulus from Congress, unemployment insurance, don't pay your rent, don't pay your mortgage, never pay your student loans, not that I'm bitter, child tax credits, and on and on and on and on. Unemployment insurance exceeding income for many people. This gave us tons, and then the Fed lowered rates to zero, driving a boom in all kinds of purchases and stuff, right? The combination of zero interest rates causing us a price appreciation for houses and autos and everything. And fiscal stimulus protects us, great. But there's a hangover, and that hangover is allowing us to continue to do well even though rates are rising. There's so much money still in the system that the impact of the interest rates isn't fully being felt. Now, why do I think this is unsustainable? At some point it runs out. A year ago, I would have thought that we'd probably end up in a recession somewhere around now. Fourth quarter, something like that. I don't know, first quarter next year, whatever. But somewhere there. A little earlier than normal would have been my guess because the interest rate hiking cycle was very strong. We're not in the recession yet, right? We're not there. So why do I think we will get there, though? Here, first, net worth has gone nowhere in 2 years. Sure, that's net worth today. It's a little higher than it was 2 years ago. That was, I think, Q4 of 21, maybe Q1 of 22. I can't remember. But the stock market peaked out on Jan 3, 22. Since then, we've had almost 2 years. The stock market's gone nowhere. Home prices last 2 years, largely nowhere. So our net worth isn't doing it. The bond market's been crushed like a bug. If you own any bonds, 10-year duration or more, you've been hammered beyond belief. So net worth isn't doing anything. This was an increase of $40 trillion in 7 quarters. $40 trillion in 7 quarters? I mean, that's enough to buy marijuana and a new car at the same time. I mean, there's plenty of money there. Yeah, it's easy. But now nothing, zero new wealth. So you're not saying, oh, I feel rich, I'm going to spend money. We're not. Next, look at savings rates. They're in the friggin' garbage can. This is how much you're saving out of disposable income. So you get your money, you pay your taxes, whatever's left, you make $100,000, I'm making it up, you get $65,000 left. Of that 65, how much is saved? Well, apparently it's 3%, 3.5%. That's ridiculously low. I mean, everybody's working. Our economy is a full employment economy right now. If you're not working, you're a lazy bum, right? There's no excuse. Now you're working and you can't save any money and everyone's got a job and inflation's still pretty big and wage inflation's still pretty strong and the Fed's nervous about that and we can't save any money. That's a little disconcerting. Okay, then there's credit card use. Oh, we're spending a lot on our credit cards. Our credit card balance is, woo, look at that. $1.25 trillion in credit card use. So we have no wealth, it's flat. Our savings rates of credit card use is well up. This is not exactly inspirational here. This isn't the sign of a great economy here. It's like this is a sign of households using their balance sheets to keep the party going. Well, I don't have enough money, so I'll save less, I'll use my credit card. You can't get savings below zero and credit cards only go up so much. And this is why. Incomes aren't keeping up with inflation. Inflation year over year at June, so that's already now 8-9 months ago, in June 22, it peaked out. June 22, inflation peaked out year over year at 9.2%. And since then it's fallen. 9.2? I mean, who here gave their employees last June a 10%, 11% pay raise? Yeah, great. No, you can't keep up with inflation. So people work and their inflation, as long as the blue line is below the x-axis, you're losing money. So the auto workers, the UAW guys, I read some reports somewhere, their income is 6% lower real than it was 4 years ago when they signed the last contract, because their incomes haven't kept up with inflation. And they're pissed and unhappy, and I get it. I mean, that's the way life is, but nonetheless, they're not keeping up, so they don't save money, and they use their credit card more, and that's not such a great thing. And you see this lack of income manifest itself here. This is total amount of disposable income. So this is $16 trillion, $17 trillion. Our economy is $25 trillion, roughly. And 2/3 of our economy is consumer spending. Well, that's 2/3 of the economy. But look where the friggin' money is. This was pre-COVID. We were at 16 trillion bucks. This is the trend line. Keep the trend line going. We should be $1 trillion higher than we are right now. But we're not. Now, look at this graph and look at 2014. The slope here is pretty flat. Okay? But in 14 it gets steeper. I mean, take this slope right here and just extrapolate forward, you're going this way, right? By contrast, take this slope and go down and you're down here. There's clearly something happens here. Now, let's take this and go back 5 slides and look at spending. 14. A slope that's flat. By contrast, here a slope that's steep. 14. We earn more money, we spend more money. This shouldn't be shocking. We're Americans, we overspend. We outsource our savings to Southeast Asians. They do the savings for us. We overspend, they oversave, and that's how it all works. But I'm not kidding. Here, suddenly, spending goes up. Spending goes up because, well, income goes up. Now, but income ain't going up now. Income is well behind where it should be because incomes aren't keeping up with inflation. That's why we're spending out of our credit card and so on and so forth. It's still odd that the economy is so strong. I mean, how much can you borrow on your credit card? Not enough to keep the economy going. So there's other things going on, and this is it. There's 2 more things going on. The first is pent-up demand for services. How many of you, I'm sure all of you went to the Taylor Swift concerts, right? And paid $2,000 for a ticket. I know I waited in line 3 days for a t-shirt, but I wasn't bitter, I was happy, yeah. It was raining, it didn't matter, I was freezing, but I got my t-shirt, yeah. People, now the Rolling Stones are gonna go on tour, right? 3 or 4 80-year-old men dancing on stage. And I'm gonna pay $2,000 for the privilege. I don't think so. But you get my point. Airplane tickets are expensive. Hotel tickets, I was at a conference recently. Hotel was $700 a night in downtown Charlotte. I mean, you have got to be kidding me, right? I could have gone to France for that much money. I mean, Charlotte's nice, but not that nice. But we have pent-up, and then we have this, excess COVID savings. We had nowhere to go during COVID. We were going to go on trips. We were going to travel around. Ben, you were going to go with your wife and your lovely kids to some cool place, maybe Argentina, and then go to Tierra del Fuego. And from Tierra del Fuego, you were going to take a cruise to the Antarctica to see the emperor penguins walking around like this with your kids, and they were going to be all excited. And you couldn't go, but you had saved 30, 40, 50,000 bucks for that. Now, up until recently, there was belief that we were on this line. And the expectation was, depending on what economists you looked at, we were going to run out of excess COVID savings, which peaked out around $2 trillion, $2.2 trillion right there. We were going to run out as early as 7 days ago, at the end of Q3. That's what the San Francisco Fed said. End of Q3, money gone. Other places said end of Q4, end of Q1, whatever. But now, we got more money. This extra, $500 billion in the system. That's easily 5 months of more money because the money's being run down roughly $1 billion, $775 billion a month. So we have more money than we thought. Just as of, literally a week ago, they tell us we have more money all of a sudden. They did some recalculations and whatever. So all these expectations that we had that we were running out of money, well, not quite true. There's more stimulus money still left over from the COVID savings that you were going to do, but you didn't do because you couldn't do because whatever. Now you'll blow it on other stuff, but it takes a while. So there's pent-up demand, excess COVID savings. This is being spent on airplanes, cars, and houses and other stuff, keeping our economy strong. There's also some good, flat-out good news and some luck that's going on now. We had a lot of bad luck, right? COVID. Then we had a shooting war in Europe. I mean, that's the stupidest thing in the world, right? That's just unfathomably stupid what Putin's doing. And then Xi Jinping closed China down for the better part of 2 or 3 years, right? In a failed attempt to save lives. I tell you, as an aside, I mean, I'm an economist, not a political scientist, but I think that what Putin's doing in Russia against Ukraine and Xi Jinping does regularly in his own country, it gives dictatorship a bad name, in my opinion. But I digress. But here, inventories are better. So, your builders, you struggle to get stuff. You really struggled a year or two ago. It was very hard to get stuff. Now it's just hard to get stuff, right? And especially electrical equipment is the hardest thing for you guys to get. Backups of 6 months, a year, 2 years in some cases. But inventory is improving. This is where inventory bottomed out. When inventory to sales ratios for retailers was 1.1. You had barely enough inventory for a month. That's when you went to the store and you couldn't buy anything. Remember that in 2020 and 2021? You go to the store, you buy toilet paper. You can't get toilet paper. I don't know about you, but I asked my friends, an unscientific survey of Elliot's friends. I asked, do you find yourself pooing more now that we're in a pandemic? Not one person said yes to me. No one said yes. But yet you can't get toilet paper. And the answer, of course, is now we're pooing at home. We used to poo in the office. So the toilet paper packages now are smaller because you don't buy a 500 pack of toilet paper for your house. You buy a 36 pack or a 12 pack. But this complication across the economy made inventories bad, made prices up. They couldn't get enough supply. It took them a long time to rejigger manufacturing to accommodate how you poo. You don't eat in restaurants, you're eating more at home. All that kind of stuff mattered. But it's getting better. You can see now it's up to 1.3. Traditionally, the orange line is between 1.35 at the low here and about 1.5, the peak there. So it vacillates between here and there. It's now well below where it historically has been. Firms are saying, we're not going to invest in inventory because it's more expensive to buy the inventory because costs have gone up. It's more expensive to store the inventory because logistics facilities are expensive. And the cost of money's gone up. And there's a chance of a recession. And we've bought so much stuff, we don't need more. I mean, how many of you renovated your house? A bunch of us. You going to renovate your house again 4 years later? Or redesign, redecorate? I don't think so. You did it all. You bought the pergola and the pavers and the big screen TV and the Weber grill and you're done. So this is not doing, it's okay, but it's good. And inflation in goods is declining. The cost of buying a thing is generally getting a little cheaper. China's selling us things cheaper because they have deflation in their economy. We bought so much stuff, we don't need so much stuff. The cost of transportation's fallen unbelievably. So pre-COVID, to move a 40-foot shipping container, corrugated metal shipping container, was $1,700 from the East Coast of China to the West Coast of the US. During the worst of COVID, so here, it was $17,000. Now it's back down to $1,800 again. And they're scrapping ships. So they were buying tons of ships that take 2 years to come. And now the ships are arriving, they're scrapping the old ships, so they're oversupplied with ships. And that's what's driving the price down. So that's helping. Then there's oil prices. Oil prices went way up, causing massive inflation, but then they came down. Now they went up, but now they're coming down again. Whatever happens, oil's done, right? It's going to go up, it's going to go down. Yeah, not a major story anymore. There's inventory issues. We're not producing a lot. We're producing a lot of oil, but we could produce more. But the oil producers don't want to make a lot more oil because they're making a lot of profit, these high prices. They like this. And we've learned to drill better. Now these drills, these guys are going down 5,000, far down. But now they're going down 25,000 feet vertically. 25,000 feet. That's 5 miles. They're drilling 5 miles horizontally once they go down. It's unbelievable what they're doing. The technology really is cool. But oil prices are no longer, so they came down. Generally now they're kind of flat. But that's good news too. So inventories are getting better. Not great, but they're better. Oil prices are generally down. That's better. The service economy is doing fine, thank you very much. This is 52% of the entire GDP is this. Because most of consumer spending, which is already 70% of GDP, 70% of it is traditionally service spending. So as service spending goes, so goes the economy. We don't spend that much money on stuff. We spend it on services. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have 13 streaming services on my phone. A new one opens, yeah, I'll spend $12.99 for that, yeah. But that's $200 a month. Oh, then my cell phone bill, right? And my health care bill, and my insurance bill, and my student loan bill, and on and on and on. Education, health care, housing. These are all services, and they've gotten expensive over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And then what do we do on vacation? We go on vacation now. In the old days, you didn't go on so many vacations. Think about your grandma, your grandparents. Did they go on big vacations? They didn't go on no vacations. And now, oh yeah, I want to learn how to play tennis. So what do? Oh, I book a tour on a week cruise through the South Pacific. We stop in Tahiti, and along the way, my favorite tennis player, Roger Federer, will actually teach me how to hit a backhand. Or I'll go on a ship on a rock cruise with the rock group Kiss. I know it sounds like a terrible idea, but this is true. I'm not making that one up. Or the Dalai Lama, okay, I'm making it up, will teach you how to do yoga. And that costs like $30,000 million. That's how we want to spend our money. We don't buy a lamp anymore, a wall, a window. I remember my grandmother, she bought a window air conditioner. She had all her friends over in her little neighborhood in New Jersey. It was unbelievable. Now you'd be embarrassed to buy a window air conditioner. I digress. But it isn't all perfect, but there's more pretty good news. This is manufacturing. Now, manufacturing isn't big enough to drive us into recession. So don't look at this and go, oh, we're below 50, we're in recession. Yeah, we are in recession. This was COVID. This was pre-COVID when President Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese imports. And shockingly, I know it's unbelievable, the Chinese retaliated. I mean, who could think that up? It's unbelievable. They're geniuses there. And this was a recession also in manufacturing. But manufacturing is not big enough to drive us into recession unless it's combined with other areas of the economy, or the recession is really, really deep. But only 13 million Americans work in manufacturing. And the economy has 160 million jobs. So we're talking, what, 8.5%? It's not quite enough. And it doesn't go up and down enough. Housing and autos are like basketballs, right? This isn't enough like that. So this is okay, it's getting better. So we have inventories are good, oil prices are okay, services are fine, manufacturing is weak but getting a little better. These are all good things. And then there's the trade deficit, as I mentioned earlier. So during pre-COVID, our trade deficit was monthly about $45-50 billion a month. Then during COVID, you see it falls, it gets much worse because we buy all this PPE, personal protective equipment, think masks and gowns and all that sort of stuff that we weren't making. We were buying it from abroad, mostly China. So our trade deficit goes to hell. it bottoms out at a little bit worse than $102 or $103 billion in 1 month, right? And now, woo, it's getting much better. It's almost back to where it was pre-COVID. Not quite, we're still $10 billion worse. There's been inflation. What's driving it? First, we don't want stuff, but you can see here, imports have fallen a lot. Exports, not so much. It's the decline in imports that's making our trade deficit better. That's good news. The bad news, however, is they're both falling. That's generally not good news. When trade falls, that's generally a harbinger of a recession. Because it means the economy's not strong, people are nervous, they're not spending so much, they pull back a little bit, and that can generate a recession. So there's good news and bad news, but this is really pretty decent news. This will bump up GDP a little bit. So we're getting a little lucky. This was very unlucky, and this is a little bit lucky. And the inventory is improving, so that's good. But look at this. This is small business confidence. That's you. Take a mirror out. Look at yourself. This is you. And you are all miserable bastards. All of you. Very unhappy people. I mean, look at this. This is last year. We're at about 90, historically a very low number. So this is August. We don't have September numbers. We'll have it in a couple of days. Early next week, we'll get it. In April, which is right there, it's hard to tell on the graph. That was the lowest number, lower than that one and that one. That was the lowest number since 2013. To give you some perspective, this is President Trump, or President-elect, or this is Mr. Trump becoming President-elect Trump, becoming President Trump. And small business happy because you're going to get a tax cut. And he came through with it. It ends next year, but that's a whole separate conversation. So that's good news. This, by contrast, is bad news. That's COVID. So we're now roughly as miserable as we were when COVID was here? I mean, what are you kidding? Are you kidding me? I mean, when COVID came, I was afraid to touch a can of tuna fish. I scratch my eye, get COVID, and die. I mean, it wasn't that way, but, I wore 13 masks. I was social distancing 37 feet. I wouldn't go to Costco until 8:15 at night because it closed at 8:30. There was no one around. I mean, you became paranoid. You were afraid you were going to die. And now that's ridiculous. This is important to keep in mind. The soft data that we all see now in economics, I'm not sure what it's saying, quite frankly. I mean, it says what it says, but its correlation with the economy has somewhat decoupled. All the soft data, how do you think, what do you think, how do you feel, what are your expectations, is it kind of the right track, where's inflation going, all those asking questions, they're all BS. I don't know why, but they are. So this may be saying something, but I don't know what it's saying. I'm looking at it still, but I'm looking at it with a grain of salt, much more than before. And then there's miserable CEOs. There you go, Mark is a CEO. Yeah, you're a CEO. You think these guys are unhappy? Well, you're friggin' miserable. I mean, look at that. That's you. This is COVID. Oh, wait, that's the global financial crisis housing bust. That's 2000 dot-com bust. This is the S&L crisis, liquidity crisis, right? And this is Paul Volcker raising rates to like 20 million%. Again, you remember that. So you're 5 for 5. I mean, this is terrible news. Again, this is somewhat I think I feel, but it's more than I think I feel because CEOs can actually implement what they think. We can hire more people, we can let go some people, we can build some space or factory or whatever. So this is in between, but still probably being polluted by some of the I think I feel BS that we don't really understand. But it's not all happiness here. Even though the soft data doesn't mean much, this is hard data. And this is leading economic indicators. And this is data that the Conference Board has determined over time that is very correlated with future economic activity, 9 months, 12 months hence. The data is horrible. It's not bad, it's horrible. At this level, recession, 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 recession. Mark, you were 5 for 5. This is 8 for 8. And their website says, we're due for a recession. They've been saying it for a long time. We're due for a recession. We're due for a recession. It doesn't come, but we're due for a recession. The data says we're going to have a recession. The data says we should have a recession. The New York Fed puts out a recession indicator. It's down from 90 to 70% likelihood recession in 12 months. When it gets above 40, that's 100% guarantee of a recession. So it's saying now it's 70%, but the recession doesn't show up. All of these data, there's tons of data out there saying we're going to have a recession, but yet it doesn't come. We're going to get there. It doesn't come. And then there's this. This is not showing recession. This is showing below the x-axis here. When it's below the x-axis, you're having substandard growth. So if GDP growth is normally 1.8, I'm making up a number that's about right, maybe you have 1.4. This suggests that 24 is not going to be a great year. And that's important to remember. Earlier on, when I began, I said to you, we're not going to have a recession like 74, 75, 81, 82, or 08, 09. The three worst recessions since the Great, each one of them sequentially, the worst recession since the Great Depression. I want you to think about the upcoming likely recession. No guarantees here. I'm a little bit less likely now than a few months ago. I'm more optimistic. Still not wildly, but think of it this way. If this is a great economy, super, unemployment's low, inflation's low, GDP's great, everything's gangbusters. And this is a horrible economy where everything's wrong, terrible inflation, bad unemployment, and so on. 10, 0, or 1. If we're lucky and we avoid the recession, we have a soft landing that's bumpy. We end up at a 6. And if we have the recession, it'll be a 4. I mean, sure, 6 is better than 4, don't get me wrong, I got that. But it's not 10 versus 0. Don't think soft landing versus hard landing. Think soft landing versus hard landing. The interest rates that are high and going to stay high for a while clearly are going to do damage to the economy. You think about high interest rates, it's like, if they last long enough, they're going to kill you. It's like if you're a guy, almost every man's got prostate cancer, right? If you live to 110, it'll probably kill you. If you live till 90, something else will kill you first. Same thing here. This is interest rates. If the interest rates go long enough and high enough, it'll eventually kill you. But usually it doesn't happen. So if they lower them fast enough, you get lucky, avoid it. We'll explain more about that later. But this is saying subpar growth. This is saying a recession. This is saying recession. This is saying, well, we're not sure, but not great news, maybe, right? And then we have firm investment in equipment, capital goods. You're buying sewing machines, or you're buying equipment and trucks or whatever it is, right? Some automatic bricklaying machine or something. This is inflation adjusted in blue, not inflation in red. This is weak. So firms are pulling back a little bit. Consumers are still spending, but I think they're going to run out of gas at some point, but it's still far enough away that we can keep the thing going for a while longer. And then there's the friggin' banks. The banks aren't your friend anymore. And when banks don't lend, you got a problem. This is a survey put up by the Fed every 3 months called the Senior Loan Officers Opinion Survey. So it's an I think, I feel survey, but not really, because it's saying, what are you doing? Are you making lending standards easier or harder? Easier or harder? That's the question. This is C&I loans, right? But they ask for C&I, they ask for CRE, they ask for home loans, they ask for construction loans, they ask for credit cards, auto loans, the whole 9 yards. And the graph looks the same for all types of loans. Doesn't really matter. Signature loans, whatever. When banks tighten like they have now, recession, 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 recession. So the banks aren't lending, right? Leading economic indicators are bad. There's a lot of building up evidence here that something crummy is going to happen down the road. But yet it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. There's no evidence of it happening yet. None. 0. Then there's fiscal policy. Okay, this is the crazy deal that President Biden made with ex-Speaker McCarthy 4 months ago. Was he the shortest speaker in the history of the U.S.? And the only one ever to lose his job in the middle. He's the 3rd shortest? Ho-ho! An American historian here. We'll come back to you later. We'll talk more. So one of the shortest in the history of America, and the only one to lose his job in the middle of the term. But nonetheless, they made a deal over the debt ceiling. That was like the trauma of 4 months ago, how fast we forget. This was, in and of itself, a worthless, stupid deal. The U.S. government has a lot of problems. We overspend like there's no friggin' tomorrow. The problem is we overspend because of entitlements. Essentially Social Security, which is a problem, but Medicare and Medicaid, which are going to kill us. That's where the problem lies. There's also defense. Well, it's hard to cut on defense when you have the Chinese breathing down your back. And now we have rising interest on the debt, which is going to be very expensive because rates are up. So instead of dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, defense, or interest on the debt, which would be solved by reducing the deficit, no, let's talk about the discretionary part of the budget. So discretionary is defense and non-defense discretionary. Non-defense discretionary, it's a fancy word for every cabinet position in the country. So think of Interior, Justice, Labor, HHS, HUD, all those agencies and all those government employees in those agencies. If you got rid of all of them, you could balance the budget. Because about 1.5 trillion bucks, including defense. Defense is 800 billion, 850, and the other's 900, 950, or the other way around. I forget which one's bigger than the other. But they're both almost the same size. If you get rid of all of defense and all the cabinet positions and the agencies under them and so on, you could balance the budget. That's how big our budget deficit is. Did they solve that problem? No. But they did cut spending a little. So if you compare Q4 before deal and after, it's worse. And this is Q1 of 24, before deal, after. So for 6 months, we have mildly contractionary fiscal policy because of a worthless deal. Didn't solve the problem, but threatened to solve the problem. And then they go, no, we're not going to solve the problem. That's too expensive politically. We can't solve the problem. We're politicians. We don't solve problems. We create them. But I digress. And so this may or may not happen because the government's going to close now in 4 weeks, right? Because now McCarthy's gone and it's a mess. You just wish government could not make things worse, but alas, no. Then there's student loans. They're coming back. Pre-COVID, student loan payments to, I guess, labor. I'm not sure if you make the payments to labor or treasury. We could argue. I don't remember. I looked. I forgot. We're running about $6.5 billion bucks a month. And now they're back at $6.5 billion bucks a month. Pre-COVID, they were sliding down, and they fell to a trough of under $2 billion bucks a month. So we're going to spend now $50 billion bucks a year more on student loans than we were pre-COVID. This is going to take money that would have been spent on, booze, drugs, women, men, coke. Now it's going to go to the Treasury. And you can see different income households, they're all going to struggle to some extent to pay their bills because of the increased burden of student loans. Now, they're all not going to pay their student loans, and Biden's going to try and excuse the money as best he can. He let off a few more people yesterday and so on. Nonetheless, it's going to cost something, right? So we have contractionary policy because of the bad deal. Now we have student loans. And we have, wealth isn't going up. Wages aren't keeping up with inflation. At some point, we run out of COVID savings. That's a lot of headwinds, but there's still a lot of gas in the tank. That's the point. And if the gas in the tank can last long enough for rates to start seriously coming down, maybe we can avoid a recession. We'll get there. And then the Fed raises rates. And this is the most important thing here. If you look at this graph, this is the 13 last rate hiking cycles, excluding the hiking cycle right now, going back to 1955. There have been 13 rate hiking cycles. 13. Of those 13, 10 wind up in recession. The 3 that don't are in purple: 64, 84, and 94. Okay, what happened those 3? That's 3 times no recession. So that's 10 times we have a recession. What's your name? You have to look. It's okay. Good. You didn't remember, but you could show me. Yes. Patricia. Cool. So Patricia, you have an ailment of some sort. Nothing life-threatening, but some unpleasant physical problem, limp or elbow, tennis elbow or something, crink in your neck, and you want to have surgery to solve the problem. I'm the world's greatest surgeon in this area. You come to me and I say, look, Patricia, after I perform surgery on you, you're not going to have any pain at all. And you've had this pain for 30 years, since you were born 30 years ago, and you're so happy now. No more pain the rest of my life. I can look forward to 50 or 60 more years here of no pain. And I say, curb your enthusiasm, Patricia. Look at the data. The data shows last year I did this surgery 130 times. But we know 10 times out of 13 it winds up in recession. In your case, that means 100 times out of 130 times, I do 10 more surgeries. The patient dies on the table. Great, she says. Oh, you're a good patient. You go, I said, you still want to do the surgery? You go, not really. I hate my husband, but I love my kids, you know, my dog, whatever, cats, whatever it is, right, neighbor. So 10 out of 13 times you wind up in a recession. 3 times you don't. 64, because the Vietnam War is ramping up. So we have fiscal expansion with a monetary contraction. They kind of cancel out, sort of. 84, energy prices collapsed. So I don't know if any of you lived in Colorado, Oklahoma, Louisiana, or Texas in '84, especially Houston and the Gulf Coast, right? But those areas went to hell in '84, and the Soviet Union ends up collapsing in 1990. It was Star Wars with Reagan and low energy prices that crushed the Soviet Union. That's '84. In '94, we were in the midst of the dot-com boom. Netscape goes public in '95. This is 10 years of massive wealth expansion that compensates for tight fiscal policy. So we got lucky 3 times. Now, could we get lucky again? Yes. There's another underlying reason I have not shared with you why those 3 times we didn't have a recession. Let me remind you again. 64, 84, 94. What they have in common is the number 4. Economics, number 4, is very meaningful, apparently. Who knew? Now, if we don't have the recession in 24, it'll be because it ends in 4. They'll say, oh, the COVID savings, the excess COVID savings, the stimulus, the slow down, the increase in wealth, all this stuff was enough to get us a bridge over the time when the Fed raised rates. And by the time the Fed was lowering rates and things returned to normal, the money was running out, but that was enough to get us over the pass. That's going to be the argument. 64, 84, 94, 24. Be wary of years ending in 4, no recession. I think we still get the recession, but you can understand why we might not. Now, there's another reason I think we get the recession. This is the inverted yield curve. You guys know what the yield curve is. Forget the picture. Look at me for a few minutes. We'll get back to the picture. The yield curve is a relationship between time and money. This is how banks make money. They screw around with time. You need $1 million for a project. You borrow $1 million, and you pay it back over time. They borrow money. I lend them money. They pay me like 1 or 2%. They lend it to you at 7 or 8, and they make the difference. Net interest margin, right? So the longer you borrow for, the more you pay. You want a 6-month loan, it's going to cost you less than a year loan, which costs you less than a 2-year loan. If you're buying a house, the longer you borrow for, the more you pay. A 10-year loan is going to be 6.5, I'm making it up. A 20-year loan, 7, and a 30-year loan, 7.5 now, as a buyer of a house. I'm roughing that out, but it's got to be about right. So there's a positive slope. More time, higher rate, upward sloping line. Upward sloping line. But not right now. Right now, it's not. It's inverted. If you want to borrow for 6 months, the Treasury will pay you 5.5%. If you borrow for 10 years, they'll pay you 4.7. So if you want to borrow for 5 months, it's cheaper to borrow for 10 years and pay it back in 9.5 and pay it back 6 months later than to actually take out a 6-month loan for the government. This is crazy. This is not normal. You have instead of having a positively sloped yield curve, you have a negatively sloped yield curve. The longer you borrow, the less you pay. Okay, every time that happens, the blue squiggle goes above the red bar. And you go, okay, who cares? No, you care. Why? Because every time the blue goes above the red bar, with the exception of 66, you have a recession, 2 recessions, recession. That's number 1. So yield curve inversions the last 8 times have led to a recession. Now, let's look at this curve even more carefully. Notice you don't get the recession at the peak. You get the recession on the way down, generally on the way down. Here it fell, and then you had the recession. Here it went below 0, and you got the recession later. Here again, it starts to come down, and then you get the recession. What this means is as the yield curve inverts, so it goes from positive to negative, that's a bad sign. But then as the yield curve comes back up, that's when the recession's more likely to show up. So the inverted yield curve is telling you somewhere down the road you're going to have a recession. And when the yield curve gets back to normal or flips up and becomes positive like it normally is, that's when the recession shows up. That's what this is saying here. So this is saying now that the yield curve is starting to turn backwards to its normal position. It's closer. It's still inverted, but it's not. It used to be here, now it's here. If it gets to there, that's when the recession shows up. So now the data is saying we're entering the more nervous period where the recession is more likely to show up. The timing is getting closer because the yield curve is going to go back under the line, which is the normal condition there should be in. So don't think, oh, well, the yield curve is going back to normal. That's good. No. The yield curve going back to normal after a long period of inversion says, oh, the recession is now almost upon us. It doesn't mean it will come. Now, interestingly enough, in 84 and 94, there was no inversion. And in 94, Greenspan was chair. And in 94, you remember, you're old, the housing market sucked. It was a crappy housing market. He trashed the housing market, he trashed autos, but it wasn't enough to tip us into recession. He was considered the maestro because he was able to raise rates enough and then lower them and avoid a recession. You hated him, but the rest of the economy loved him. Then in 2007 comes the global financial crisis, and Greenspan missed it entirely because he was reading Ayn Rand, the fountainhead, a little too much. And he forgot that there's a real economy out there, you know, and so he got one right, got one wrong, you know, 1 out of 2, it's not bad. What does Meatloaf say, 2 out of 3? You know, it's pretty good. So this is a nerve-wracking sign too. And then when does the recession start? Look, 2 years from the first rate hike is when the average recession starts. 2. First rate hike was March of 22, so that's on average March of 24. So just because we haven't had a recession yet doesn't mean we're not going to get one. It just means we haven't had it yet. Hopefully we avoid it. And remember, if we get it, it's only going to be here. It's not going to be terrible. It'll be this. And if we avoid it, it's not going to be unbelievably great. It'll be better than as recession. It'll be here. So we're fighting over 6-4, not 10-0. But it hasn't come yet. Because this extra money, cars are doing well. New home construction's doing well. Excess COVID savings is strong. Pent-up demand is good. And we'll talk about the money supply too. Here's an example of why it takes so damn long to get a recession. This is consumer spending, goods and services in different colors. This is the months from the first rate hike. It takes friggin' 18 months for consumer spending to peak after the Fed raises rates. The US economy is very large. To turn our economy from an economy where demand is outstripping supply and inflation is getting worse to an economy that's weaker is work. Because it's so big and so diversified. If you look at the data, I'll give you one example. If you look at the data for Katrina back in 2005, there's no evidence of Katrina. At the macro level, the US, look in September of 2005, no evidence, 0. You have no idea it's there. You will not see it in any macro data. Because the economy's too weak. We're not Switzerland. Switzerland's a small country. What do they make? Chocolate watches? So if the watch industry goes into hell, or chocolates, we say we're allergic to chocolate, within a month, they're toast. We're America. You know, we can have oil go to hell, we can have housing go to hell, we can have cars go to hell, we can have tennis rackets go to hell, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We're too big. It's hard to turn the ship around here and make it go from declining to increasing or increasing to decreasing. 18 months, it's a long time, a very long time. Moreover, according to Apollo, smart private capital guys, we haven't even begun to feel the impact of monetary policy tightening yet. We only begin to feel it now in Q4, and then man, do we feel it. Monetary policy takes a long time to feel. Let me give you an intuitive example of this. Fiscal policy happens quickly. Monetary policy takes a long time. So think of it, you go to the pharmacy, you want something to act fast, right? You have indigestion or something. You want, hey, pharmacist, dude, doc, give me something that's fast acting. Well, they give you fiscal policy because the government gives you a check or cuts your taxes. You feel it right away. You spend the money right away. But monetary policy, they raise interest rates. Who cares? Look, you got a kid in college or something, right? You go, Junior, don't go to college this year. Interest rates are high. We don't want to stress the economy out. Is that going to happen? No. Or you go, you got something going on. Oh, you're sick. You need some health care, right? You say, I don't want to stress the health care system out. Let's just hold off and I'll take my chances with the cancer. I don't think so. We don't stop. So let me give you an example of what the difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy is. I don't smoke marijuana, never smoked marijuana, never will smoke. People do. Is it legal here? No. Only in Asheville. Only in Asheville. Oh, Asheville, downtown. Okay. So if you're in downtown Asheville, if you smoke marijuana from a J or a blunt or a bong, not that I know these things, but I read extensively. It takes 7 minutes, not that I've timed it, to metabolize the pot and you're high. But suppose the first time you don't smoke it, you eat it. Think of a gummy bear or a cookie or a brownie. I've heard of these things. I don't know. I heard. It takes about 40 minutes to metabolize. So you eat a brownie, 7 minutes later, nothing happens. So you have a second brownie. Nothing happens. Third brownie. Oh, you've read the same article I read. Someone snickering there. Yeah. Think fiscal policy, smoking marijuana. Monetary policy, eating marijuana. Different ways. They both have a strong impact, but they're very different processes. Monetary policy takes a long time. Unless you're buying a house or a car or building a building or refinancing a house or building, you don't give a damn that rates have gone up. It's very slow as a result. Fiscal policy, we all get $1,000. Whoa, we're happy. It's quick and today. That's why this takes a long time. Now, how bad will the recession be? I don't see a bad recession here. That's why I said it's going to be a 4 or a 6. The recession's not terrible. It'll be a mild one. If you look back since the Great Depression, here and here together, these together are the Depression. Since they've only had 3 recessions that are really bad. 74, 75, Arab oil embargo, 81, 82, Paul Volcker raising rates to 1 trillion%, and the global financial crisis housing bust of 08, 09. Because when you have a recession, economists can help you get out. They can't tell you when it will happen. They're useless there, sorry. But once you're in, we know what to do. It's fiscal stimulus and some monetary stimulus, and that's going to help you get out. One quicker, one more slowly. So don't think this will be a bad one. Unemployment will rise a bit, GDP will fall a bit, and we'll get over it. This won't be long lasting. Now, the labor market. What the hell's going on in the labor market? It's a big conundrum to some extent. And there's some luck going on here, which is great news. Makes me very happy. I'm not sure how to read the luck exactly, but there's luck. So first, unemployment's going up. Here, 3.8%, 2 months in a row, the highest rate in like a year and a half. So there's clearly rise in unemployment. And when unemployment historically rises, it goes up quite a lot, right? It goes up a lot. You go historically, every single time it bottoms out, the last 10 times, it goes up a lot and you get a recession. So whenever unemployment starts to rise because the Fed's raising rates, you risk a recession. So I'm nervous about the unemployment increase. Now, the unemployment increase that we're getting of late is a pretty good one. It means people are coming into the labor force. This is very good news because more workers is a supply side problem pushing down inflationary pressures and wage pressures, which is stellar. I'm happy. But unemployment rising makes me nervous, and you always get the recession. Because the reason unemployment is going to go up is because the Fed's raising rates. The Fed raises rates, you get a recession, unemployment rises. The Fed wants unemployment to rise a little bit. But when you begin to see unemployment rise, the Fed can't turn the dials backwards very fast because it takes 2 years to move it either direction. The boat's a big boat either way, right? Then there's this. This is weekly hours worked. It's fallen from 35 hours a week to 34.4, 34.3. You look at this and you go, that's like 7/10 of an hour. Who cares, right? It's meaningless. No. From here to here is the equivalent of losing 3 million full-time equivalent jobs. So last month we created a shocking 337,000 or 335,000 jobs. Like a crazy high number. I think they'll readjust it, but anyways. But at the same time we're cutting the work week. That's like I'm hiring you, Ben, and at the same time I'm telling you, come into work Monday morning at 10, don't come in at 9, or come in at 9, not 8, or whatever it is. I'm hiring you and essentially laying you off like a little bit. This can't go on. A good economy, labor numbers go up, we're fine. Bad economy, we fire people. Here we're kind of doing both. We're firing a bit and we're hiring a bit because firms haven't been able to get workers. So firms are hoarding workers. It's been so hard to hire workers for so long. Oh, you're back. I insulted you so much you had to let me know.
I'm so blessed when I leave the room.
Oh, it's so good to see you again. You made me happy now twice, that you came and that you're coming again. Yes, I'm overwhelmed,
I'll
really.
do it again no matter what.
Oh, go ahead. It's all right. You'll make me feel good, bad, and then even better. So this is a serious deal. Firms have such a hard time finding workers that now that they can get them, they're grabbing them. They're going to keep them on ice a little bit, but they're going to hoard workers because there's no evidence of a recession yet. If they see the recession, then they'll start kicking the workers out. But there's no evidence of a recession. And it was because the government paid workers not to work with stimulus checks and unemployment insurance exceeding your income and so on, and child tax credits and don't pay your rent and don't pay your mortgage and so on. You have to retrain people to want to work. It's only now coming back. This isn't great. Not terrible, but it's still high enough, it's fine. Then there's overtime hours. You can see there, recession, 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 recession. So when overtime falls this low, the chances of recession are high. So you have this, you have the inverted yield curve, the leading economic indicators, CEO confidence, and you get the idea, right? And then there's this is quit rates. So what percentage of the labor force, 2%, 2.2, 2.4, are quitting their job on a monthly basis, monthly. So this is the dot-com boom, 2.4% quit their jobs. That's what, 29% of the population over the course of a year quit their jobs. This is the housing boom, 2.2%. That's 26% over a year. Pre-COVID, it was 2.3. So 2.4, 2.2, 2.3. This is the lowest unemployment since the Vietnam War in 68 or 69. During the worst of COVID, it hit 3. 3? 3? 2.4 was the all-time high. It goes up to 3. That's 36% of the population quits their job every year. Look to your left, look to your right. One of you will quit your job in the next 12 months. This was back then. It's not now. It's down. Now it's just 2.3, which, except for the dot-com boom, is the highest it's ever been. It's too damn high. When workers are feeling this giddy, even though it's well down from 3, they're still listening to Johnny Paycheck every morning as they walk to work from their bedroom to the living room. And they're going to tell their boss, I want a 10% pay raise. And will the boss pay it or not? That's the fight that's going on now. Bosses are beginning to say, I don't think so. But yet there's tons of strikes going on, right? The UAW strike and the writer's strike and the actor's strike. And now, Kaiser went on strike, right? So I was born at Kaiser Hospital. So if I was born now, I wouldn't have been born, I guess. It's just, no, don't do that. We'll delay your birth 3 days or something. I don't know, whatever. And then this is job growth up until yesterday. Now it went up. The last 2 months were revised up, and the last month went up. That's weird. It's good news. I mean, I'm unequivocally happy no one wants a recession. I mean, no one wants a recession, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not bucking for a recession here. This was a very interesting report because job totals went up, labor force went up a little bit, not much, and wage growth went down. This was all light, no heat. This is an unbelievably good report. I think it was too good. I think it gets revised down. And I think what's going on is there's an increase in the supply of labor, not so much the demand, more supply of labor, which is altogether a good thing. Again, it pushes down wage growth. It allows jobs to be more plentiful. This would be a good break. And let me explain what's driving it. I don't have it here. I have the slides out here. It's the labor force participation rate. When COVID came, the labor force participation rate collapsed. Then a few months after, it jumped up, and then it stabilized for about a year. And then it went up again. And I thought it was done. And the last couple of months, it's been drifting up again. It's now just about back where it was pre-COVID. Among the 25 to 54-year-olds, that's you and me, It's as high as it's ever been. Among women, it's as high as it's ever been in history. And among men, it's just about back where it was pre-COVID. So men are still a little lazy. They're still playing a lot of John Madden 24 or Grand Theft Auto 164 or 9 or whatever. But it's getting better. As this gets better, this is a supply side shock to the economy. It allows more employment and wages to come down. This is unequivocally good as long as this continues to go. We'll see what happens. This is really good news. We need to see this number come back to here to get inflation systematically at 2%, which is what the Fed wants. It's too high now. Even though wage growth isn't keeping up with inflation, wage growth is driving inflation above 2%, which the Fed doesn't want. So workers are losing money and the Fed's unhappy. It's a double bad whammy. But this has to come back to 3.25. The last 3 months of this number has been 3.25%. So take the last 3 months, multiply it by 4 to get a year, and seasonally adjust it and annualize it, you get 3.25%. So it's like as if we can keep this, wage growth comes down to back down to here, maybe we avoid the recession. The extra cash we have protects us for a while longer, and then the Fed begins to lower rates more, and maybe we avoid the recession, or we have a very mild recession. This is possible now. This number coming down, more jobs, less wage growth. If this is true, it's great news. Again, I'm not convinced it is, but it's good news. Now, is there inflation? Yeah, there's inflation. Or there was a lot of inflation. There's less now. So this is the evidence of inflation I see in the store. Prices are the same, yeah, but the tuna fish can now is 3 ounces, not 6. Yogurt's 5.3. Who the hell eats yogurt in 5.3? I want 8 ounces. I'm a hungry guy. So here's inflation. It's a complicated story. Bear with me. Let's unpack it. Blue is headline inflation. So every month they tell us inflation, year over year was whatever it was. It peaked out at 9.2% in June of 22 compared to June of 21. And it's been systematically falling for like a year since. And then in June or something, it bottomed out. And then July and August, it went up because of energy from 3 to 3.2 to 3.7 because energy prices went up. We'll have 1 more month of this going up because of energy prices. But then energy prices start to fall again, so it'll go away. Economists don't look at blue. They look at red. Red is core inflation. Core inflation is blue minus food and energy. So the first reaction people have when I tell them this is, what? Economists ignore food and energy? What kind of effers are you? I mean, that's ridiculous. Life would be short and cold without food and energy, right? But why do food and energy bounce around? You can see the blue is bounced like a basketball. The red's much more Pacific, right? Why? It's because food and energy bounce around because of war and weather, right? Right now, Hamas attacked Israel last night, so Israel's now gonna plow into Hamas and probably beat the crap out of them, and may well attack Iran at the same time. And Iran may respond because Iran's funding Hamas to attack Israel. It's complicated. If this happens, oil prices will go way up. There's no question, right? It'll bump oil prices. So war and weather are factors the Fed tries to avoid altering U.S. monetary policy because of external shocks that just come and go. Oh, there's a drought in Saskatchewan. Like, who cares? Next year there'll be rain. It'll be fine. Thank you. Whatever. I mean, it costs households money. Inflation's bad. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a permanent thing, and it's not a U.S. domestic inflationary mojo pressure. It's some world thing. So economists look at red, but now the Fed says no. Even this is not the right measure. This number is almost 5%, right? The Fed wants 2, red, 2. It's now close to 5. They're not lowering rates anytime soon. But the Fed says, we don't want to look at just blue minus food and energy. What we want to look at is just services. Ta-da! Over 5. Why? The Fed wants to look at services primarily, they tell us, because that's where wage growth is going to show up the most. If you build a car, there's not a lot of labor in a car. There's more labor in a house. Half the house is labor. But think of a massage. That's all labor. Oh, a little bit of rent. You want legal services or accounting services? That's all labor with a little bit of rent. A haircut, nails, that's all labor. So let's look where labor costs are going to be the biggest factor, because we need those to come down 1 more percentage point to get inflation down to 2%. That's this. This is over 5. So headline is closer to almost 5, and services are over 5. The Fed ain't lowering rates right now. There's no way. The Fed's not going to lower rates, in my humble opinion, until the regular core inflation, so blue minus food energy, is down to 3. At 3, they can lower it. And you might say to me, that's friggin' arbitrary. Well, yeah, life is arbitrary. They got political pressures. They have to keep the political pressures at bay. They have to convince the markets that what they're doing is plausible. 3% seems like a good number. I'm gonna pick. Oh, you just, yeah. What's your name? Ellis. Ellis. You have an identical twin brother. You didn't know this, but you do. You're the younger of the identical twin brothers. And you may have forgotten this because you do a little too much of this or whatever. You killed somebody. You and your brother conspired to kill somebody. He's 10 minutes older than you. When you killed the person, at the moment the bullet went through or the arrow went through or the knife went through, you were 17 years, 364 days, 23 hours and 55 minutes. You were 5 minutes shy of 18. He was, by contrast, 18 hours and 5 minutes old. He's of age. You're juvie. You get 2 years and you clean floors and you're free. He spends the rest of his life in prison. It seems arbitrary. 18, yeah, whatever. It's the way it is. Life is arbitrary. 3%, not there. Fed's not lowering rates. And the Fed raised rates too slowly. The Fed raised rates too slowly. Which direction? Because unemployment was so damn high because of COVID. They weren't going to quickly raise rates and stop employers from hiring people and building plant. No. So they waited too long. They helped generate inflation, along with Congress and China and Russia with the war and so on and so forth. So what's the Fed going to do? Well, I don't really know what the Fed's going to do. If I knew that, I wouldn't be working for a living. But the Fed funds rate's now 5 3/8. They raised it there on July 26th. At their last meeting, they held it at 5 3/8. I think by the end of the year, there's a chance they raise it to 5 5/8. I'm punting here and showing you 1/8 of a point. They don't raise by 8s, they raise by quarters. So it'll either be 5 5/8 or remain 5 3/8. I'm punting. I don't think they need to raise, especially now with the rates having gone way up in the last month, right? Rates are way up. If the Wall Street's doing the work for you, you don't have to really do it. So I think late in the cycle here, rates gone way up, they're not going to do it. But maybe I'm wrong. Hold off. Now, I've talked to you about automobiles doing well, pent-up demand, excess COVID savings, and more excess COVID savings than we thought, $500 billion more excess COVID savings. There's also the money supply. If you look historically, when the money supply shrinks like it is now because the banks aren't lending, right? We looked through that already, whether it's C&I, CRE, personal loans, right? Auto loans, credit cards. The money, you have a recession. I mean, that's 40, 50 years ago. I understand that. But money supply stuff still matters. It matters more on the upswing than the downswing. So looked at in isolation, this is a very bad sign. But look at this. This is the money supply growing like friggin' mushrooms after a friggin' rainstorm. You have massive increase because the banks were lending so much money because we were all going to the banks with wheelbarrows of money because we had the excess COVID savings and the stimmy checks and capital gains because we're selling stock into the booming market, sell a house, whatever. The banks' ratios go to hell. They're lending it out as fast as they possibly can and so on. Money supply grows. This is bad, but that's unbelievably inflationary and growth for the economy. So we're still living with the overhang of this, the hangover of this. So we have cars doing well, we have new home construction doing pretty well, we have excess COVID savings, we have pent-up demand, massive increase in the money supply. That's what's giving us juice to keep staying strong and keep pushing off the possible recession. If you push it off far enough, maybe it goes away. I'm not convinced it has done that yet, but every couple more months, 6 more months, that's already meaningful. Now, let's talk about housing. We'll wrap it up, and then we'll do Q&A if we have time. Hopefully, we'll have no time. I'll have blown through my time, and there'll be no chance to make me look bad. Housing is a very interesting story. We've never seen something like this before, ever. The problem with the housing market, as you are acutely aware, better than anybody I know, there's no friggin' homes to buy. Housing inventory peaked out at 4 million in 07. 07. So this is when the housing market went to the crapper. This is 06 and 07. It took another year to 08, 09 for the economy to go into hell, all of 8 and a half of 09. A 2-year lead up. During that 2-year lead up, the Fed did nothing. Ben Bernanke, who was vice chair of the Fed at that time in 07, well, now it's the home builders, goes to the Capitol and says, the housing problems are well contained to the housing market. Oops, that was totally wrong. And he wins Nobel Prize in economics 13 years later. Bernanke's super smart, but he knows nothing about the future. This inanimate jar of ketchup is as good at predicting the future as Ben Bernanke. Just spin it. Oh, it says recession. Okay, it could be, you know. Who knows? Use your magic dice, your balls, your decision maker on your desk. No one knows. I'll give you another example of this. 2 years ago, a Silicon Valley bank goes under in April, right? And they said, well, it's not our fault. The stupid CEO goes to Capitol Hill, testifies and blames. He blames Treasury. He blames the Fed. He blames the OCC. He blames the regulators. He blames everybody except, I'm a genius. No, he was an idiot, but that's besides the point. But in his defense, I wanted to look up what the Fed told us the Fed funds rate was going to be in 23. Because the Fed meets every 6 weeks, and every 3 months, every second meeting, they tell us what they expect GDP, unemployment, inflation, and the Fed funds rate to be 1 year and 2 years hence. So you can look in every second meeting in 21, it'll tell you what they think the Fed funds rate will be in 23. Anybody want to venture a guess what the Fed told us they expected the Fed funds rate to be in 23 in 21? What? 5 3/8. So you think that 2 years ago they said it's going to be 5 3/8 now. Anybody else want to counter Eddie, the genius? Who's going to win the bat? Who's going to win because no one else is going to compete? Someone says 4. 4. You say 5 3/8. Anybody else? 2. 2, 4, 5 3/8. Anybody else? Who says 2? You win, but you don't get the prize because you're over. You don't get the showcase. You lose the showcase because you're over. The actual number is 5/8 of a point. If they raise rates one more time between now and the end of the year, the rate will end up being 5 5/8. But what is 500 basis points among friends? So the Fed told us they're off by 1,000% or 90%, depending on the direction you're looking at. The Fed also told us that the inflation that we experienced was transitory. It wasn't transitory. Now the Fed tells us they're going to keep rates up higher for longer. I mean, it could be. Who knows? As Meatloaf says, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. They may get 1 out of 3. That's pretty good too. No one knows. The Fed knows nothing. When Powell gets up after at 2 o'clock on the meeting days, he comes as a presser at 2:30 East Coast time here. He gets up, he just trash talks at us. It's like football players on the field or hockey players in the corner of the rink, just yelling at each other. I guess, well, I don't think they do. Probably those people have detailed conversations on the ice and on the field. They probably, I don't know, question your integrity, and maybe they question your family lineage. I guess that's probably what they do, right? I would guess that's the conversations that they have. They're detailed, probably explicit, but not very deep in quantity. So there's no houses. That's the issue with we're off the Fed now. No houses. Then COVID comes. COVID comes here. Housing supply is already emaciated because you guys never recovered from the crash of 08, 09. You never recovered. Home builder membership at NHB collapsed by half. A lot of the workers who went back to their foreign countries, people gave up their business and changed careers and became crop dusters or opened up a bank or something, whatever. Then COVID comes, rates fall to 0, and the housing supply falls even lower and bottoms out in March of 22. That was the peak of the housing market, March of 22. Since then, it's gone nowhere, effectively. These are now the lowest months in the history of months lately. There's no supply because everyone's locked into their damn mortgage. Everyone's got a 3.5% mortgage for 30 years. You may have triplets, but you're not going to buy a new house. You may change jobs. I'll fly back and forth between here and Los Angeles. We're not buying a new house. Nothing's going to make me sell my house. No housing. Because of COVID. This is also a leftover COVID phenomena. the Fed lowered rates, and we had this unintended consequence of massive purchase of housing and refi. There's like less than 1% of Americans can now refi and save money. No one can do it because everybody did it, and rates are now very high. No houses. This is a great story. This is the relationship between price appreciation per month, so 0.5% to 6% a year, 12% a year, and months of inventory, not units, but months, which is a better measure. There's a straight line. Normally, we're at 5 months of inventory and 6% price appreciation a year, nationally. COVID comes, we end up here. 2 months of supply, 20% appreciation, right? Great. Then the Fed raises rates. As soon as the Fed raises rates, we migrate here for 7 months, where inventory remains very emaciated, but prices are falling. We've never seen this before. Why does this happen? This happens because we go, oh my God, the Fed's raising rates. And what happens with the house price when the Fed raises rates historically? They go down because we end up in a recession, right? So we all go, whoa, prices start to fall. And then we realize, oh, but inventory's not going up because we all have the golden handcuffs of a 3% 30-year mortgage. And then prices come back to normal again. That's where we are now. So this same graph is the same here. This is COVID, 2 years. That's the 7 months here is here. And now, oops. And now we're back here again, which is over there. Home prices are appreciating again. This is nuts because there's still no inventory. And because there's no inventory, you're building houses now into an increasing rate environment of nearly 7.5%, 8%. And you're not even miserable. We'll get to your sentiment in a couple of seconds. This is existing home sales. They're barely at 4 million, 4 million, 4 million, 4 million. That's the housing bust 4 million. This is Congress stimulating the housing market in part because of NHB. I was there at the time, and we helped convince them to give housing a boost. So they do that. They rob demand from the future into the present. When the programs end, housing demand shrinks wildly. But just for 6 months, it's back at 4 million. 4 million, 4 million, 4 million, 4 million, 4 million. Even back here in 94, when Greenspan was screwing with you, barely went below 4 million for a year. 4 million is the lowest number you get. Why? People die, they have diseases, they get divorced, they have too much debt. Thank God they do. Realtors love the 4 Ds, right? You have octuplets, you need a new house. You have a job 2,000 miles away, you need a new house. That latent demand, that just solid base load demands, 4 million, that's where we are. I don't care what happens to rates, it doesn't fall below 3.9 million, whatever it is. We're now at or near the very bottom on existing housing sales because there's no demand. There's not much supply, but there's a little bit more demand than there is supply, and that's why prices are up. There's not very much, but there's a little. Now, this is when the housing market went to hell, existing housing market went to hell. In January of 22, you were fine. February, early March. And then between March and September, we go from hero to zero. Best to worst in 6 months. That's the collapse in the housing market. And then it tracks 14. And then rates go even higher, and now we're at 1995 levels. Because before 14, the worst year was 95. But there's still 4 million sales. There's more cash, and there's people who have to move. That's all there is. But there's no supply. And there's also buyers, investor buyers are buying houses, and they're buying cheap houses because you're not building cheap houses. The demand for cheap houses is strong, and no one's building cheap houses. So they're going to go up in price. Then there's home builder sentiment. So home builder sentiment's great, it's good, and then it collapsed like a rock. And then when inventory is so low, home builders go, oh, hey, we can sell houses, yay. And then they go, oh my God, rates just went up in the last 2 months, another 100 basis points. Crap. This is a pretty high level, given how high rates are. It's a mildly, it's not, this is saying a recession. This is no longer saying recession right now. So home builders aren't exactly the happiest kids in the party here, but they're certainly not depressed, and they're not taking too much Xanax, just a little Xanax. I think that's the way to think about it, right? And look at what's going on in the home building world. This is starts. Multifam is collapsing. We'll get into why in a couple of seconds. Single fam is strong because there's nothing to buy in the single fam world. So you're going to buy them down with a 2-1 buy down. You're going to give them a free renovated built attic, finished attic or finished basement or an extra garage or better kitchen or better bushes, not builder bushes, but like real nice bushes or something like that, right? But single family is relatively strong. It's now back where it was pre-COVID. And pre-COVID, that was the best single family activity since 2008. So we're now back where we were pre-COVID. This is not great, but it's not bad. We're still short housing. And this is permits. Single family is terrific, and multifamily is falling off a cliff. Multifamily is the wrong place to be right now. It really is. It's all bad. This is existing sales of new homes, back where it was pre-COVID, pretty decent. Not where it should be. We need more because we're so underbuilt, but that's what it is. And look at this. This is the percentage of of all homes for sale that are new. I tell all the realtors, find a builder, because you're the only game in town. Normally you're 10, 12% of the market. Now you're double at 25, because there's nothing existing to buy. That's why you can, as long as the inventory of existing is low, this is an opportunity for you to build more homes. And there's no likelihood of this changing unless rates fall to 5% and people start putting their houses on the market of pent-up demand to move. Or people want to buy a first-time home who can finally afford to do it. Now, new home prices are falling a little bit because you have to sell the house, right? So how do you do it? You lower the price. How do you help do that? By shrinking the size of the house. The house size is, so here COVID hits, and what happens? There's a momentary increase in home size. Why? Because I want my own office. I need space to work. I work at home. My wife works at home. My girlfriend's also at home. We need 3 offices. There's not enough space for all of us. So we build more homes. But then interest rates begin to go up. You go, well, we got to shrink the size of the house. So you've lowered the price, you've shrunk the size, but you're getting some decent volume because rates are so high and existing home potential sellers are locked into their house because they have the golden handcuffs. Now, if we have a recession, which I think we will, but not a bad one, and maybe hopefully we don't, this is not 08-09. You have to remember, this is not 08-09. Right? Demographically, in 08-09, we were here. It was terrible. This is the biggest cohort of people in American history, and 34 years old, right there, is the single biggest year to buy a house. So you have this huge cohort of people about to want to buy a house with no houses to buy. It's a great time to be a home builder right now, or own a house to sell or something, right? 2, 13, 14 years ago, we were overbuilt. We had the housing boom. We were overbuilt by 1 million homes. Now we're underbuilt by 3, 4 million homes. We can argue. But it's a change of like 4 to 5 million homes because you didn't build homes for 15 years. It's your fault. It's all your fault. I blame 100% on you. I'm joking. Right? Then, 14 years ago, home prices were high and rents were super cheap. But now they're both quite high. They're both falling a little bit, but they're both high. You can't just change your living tenure to save money. This is not a way on. Then, unemployment in housing and construction was high. You could build homes. We didn't. But now, forget about it. There's no one to build, and you have the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and you have the CHIPS bill, and you have the IRA bill, the green energy bill. They all need construction workers. What, they're going to want to build homes? I mean, they'll build homes, but they're going to have other job opportunities too. You're going to be fighting like hell to get workers. And you still have supply chain problems on big circuits for electrical equipment primarily, right? And then 13, 14 years ago, there was a friggin' credit bubble of magnificent proportions. And we're going in to buy a house at the time. They asked me, how much do I make? I said, I make $1 million a year. They said, can you prove it? I said, yeah, I have a stub in my trunk, you know? That's fine, we believe you. And I said, I want to buy a Ferrari. Okay, well, that's $200,000. Some months I may not make my payment. Don't worry about it. We'll add it to the principal. Don't sweat it. No doc, option only, liar loans. I mean, they were popular. Now, here's a credit bubble. Here, there's no friggin' credit. So if you keep your house, you're going to do fine. And home ownership now, homeowners have huge home equity. 13, 14 years ago, home prices fell 25, 28%. So you could give your keys back. You didn't care. But now, even if you can't pay your bills, and the lender says, we got to turf you out, the lender will also say, stay in the house, mow the lawn, pay the electric bills. Don't rip out the copper wiring, please. Don't sell the appliances. We'll sell the house. We'll give you a check for like $100,000 of your home equity. Just take care of the house. And you will, because you're going to live rent-free for a bunch of months, and then we'll sell the house. So even if you lose the house, you're not losing your money, and you have no incentive to wreck the house. Last but not least, look at credit quality. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years ago, so many buyers had FICOs below 760. No one does today. If you look at Fannie and Freddie's portfolio of loans, the default rates are now about 0.6%. They're very, very low, the delinquency rates. And half of those delinquencies are coming from loans from 03 to 08 or 09. And that's 2% of their portfolio. 2% of their portfolio is driving almost half of the default rates for all of Fannie and Freddie, because the loan quality there is still killing Fannie and Freddie, because the loans were so crappy. These loans, and if we have the recession, unemployment will rise 2 points, from 3.5 to 5.5. In 08-09 recession, it jumped from 5 to 10.5. So it's a 5.5 percentage point increase. So it's almost triple we had last recession to what we're likely to have. And we have home equity, and we're short homes, and there's no credit, and the buyers are good quality. And building a friggin' home costs a friggin' fortune now compared to what it did 13, 14 years ago. This is not labor and land. This is just inputs. And this is not for res. This is for all construction. But that's unbelievable, 41%. You can't build a cheap house now. So there's not going to be any bargain sales on homes. Last but not least, look at the cost of a double wide. $160,000. Before COVID, $107,000. You have no land and no water and no sewer. You want well and septic, it's going to cost you what, 40 more? I don't know, 50 more. You want some land, 30, 40 more. You're talking $250,000 for the cheapest available house you can possibly buy. We have a housing shortage, and then now, this is single fam, COVID, and because of COVID, you couldn't finish the houses, so the houses being built skyrocketed. But now they're working their way down. There's a little increased supply. That's good for the economy. But look at multifam. This is part of the problem multifam has. Before COVID, we were at roughly 600,000 homes. Now we're at 1 million homes. So there's 400,000 extra homes being built in the multifam world that the damn developers can't finish because they can't get a C of O because they're missing some big piece of equipment or something, a garage door, or whatever it is, they can't get it. As these come on, absorption rates have to go up, and they're not going to go up. They're not going to go up. Vacancy rates are rising, rent prices are coming down, and cap rates are going up, driving the price of the units down. So multifam is a friggin' disaster area for the next year or two. That said, if you can't buy a house, you're going to have to rent an apartment. In the long run, it's going to be great. And banks aren't lending against multifam right now. They've stopped, right? Largely stopped. Now, we'll wrap it up here with 4 more slides. South Carolina, looking good. 2010 through 2000. North Carolina, not bad, but South Carolina better. This is 2000 to 2021, June 20 to June 21. South Carolina's looking great. Here, Texas, and the Intermountain West. That's where people are moving. They're moving to the south, Texas, and the Intermountain West. That's it. The rest of the country is nothing. It's just junk. This is 21. South Carolina was 5th, NC was 10th. You're always better than North Carolina. Always better. Because you're smarter people. That's what it is, right? So South Carolina's strong. This is 21. Now look at 21 to 22. Now it's the whole South, right? The Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. And Tennessee's being driven by Nashville. It's not Knoxville. It's not Chattanooga. There's nothing. Then it's Texas, and it's the Intermountain West. If I were making a company to grow in the U.S., where would I move? I'd move to one of these 4 or 5 states, here or there. And Colorado now is getting too expensive, and that's New Mexico, and no one wants to live there. You vacation there. This is now most recently 22. South Carolina's 3rd. NC 9, better, but you're still better. I live in Florida. We're the best. Okay. It's a burden I bear. It's okay. It's the first time, number 1, in like 40 or 50 years. Texas is great, and the Intermountain West. It's the same states. Oh, and Delaware. I guess Joe Biden has a friend who moved there or something that doubled the population. I don't know, whatever. But you get the point. So the Carolinas, not only are you good looking, and not only are you smart, but you're lucky you live in South Carolina. And the Carolinas both, they're objectively terrific places to live. Taxes are low, weather's good, home prices are pretty reasonable. People are moving down there directly from the north, and they're coming up here from Florida because the traffic is so bad, and they don't want to have the global heat rising flood their house. So they're moving here. So congratulations, you've got a great thing going here. You really do. If you look at state by state, most recently, here again, this is North Carolina and South Carolina. Most of the places are doing pretty well. Along the coasts, naturally, they're doing well, right? Now, this is the overall economy. South Carolina, looking good. This is a year and a half ago. A year ago, a little more than a year. Okay, now weaker. The country's weakening. There's no question, I think it's weakening. But we'll get through this. If we have a recession, it won't be bad. For none of you, this will be your first recession. You'll manage. You'll be okay. 1/7 of the time we're in recession. This shouldn't be like a shocking thing. The five takeaways. 24 can't be a great year. It just cannot be. The pressures, the headwinds, the high rates, and so on and so forth. It's too much. Could be a decentish year, but it can't be a great year. The Fed's going to raise rates once more, maybe. I don't think it matters. What matters now is how long they keep them up. The longer they keep them up at this high rate, the higher the chances of a recession become, because it slowly eats away at the strength of investment and decision-making and risk-taking and so on, expansion and all that kind of stuff. Job growth last month was really, really good, surprisingly good. Not convinced it can last. We can talk about that tonight. Inflation's falling. I want it to fall faster. If it falls faster and wage growth continues to grow more increasingly slowly, the Fed might change their mind, lower rates quickly. Maybe we avoid the recession, maybe. Watch unemployment. It has to go up. As it goes up, inflation will fall further. We don't want unemployment to fall much. That's the key thing, right? This is my name, my cell number, my phone number, my Twitter handle, website, and email address. I put out 70 words 5 days a week on the economy. No graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. If you want to get it. If you don't get it, maybe you should. The way to get it easiest, take your phone, text the word bow tie to the 5-digit number 66866. Be prompted for an email address. You'll hear from me every day until you die, maybe afterwards too. This is a long-term relationship. I'll be here for lunch. I'll be here for dinner. I'll be here tonight murdering somebody from what I understand or helping solve the murder. It's been a pleasure being here. I hope I've given you insight into the economy, into the labor market, into inflation, into the thinking of the Fed, and the housing market, which you guys know intuitively already all by yourself really, really well. Thank you. Thank you.